Have you ever wondered what your pet is thinking? Have you ever lost a pet? It's a very sad time, isn't it? Have you ever thought, I'd love to hear from my pet again? If the answer is yes to any of those questions, then, well, you're in luck today, because Susie Shiner is with me. She's a pet psychic. She claims to be able to communicate with animals through telepathy. And she's here with her partner, Paul Braithwaite, who is also a pet psychic. I don't just give you one. I give you two for the price of one. Hello, Susie.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for coming in. Hello, Paul.
Good afternoon, Malcolm.
Lovely to see you both. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, you too.
How long, Susie, have you been doing this?
I've been talking to animals, if you like, or holding thought conversations with them for about 10 years.
Thought conversations.
Yes, that's how I like to talk about it. So, so essentially it's mediumship, but for animals. And I started off as a medium.
Yes.
And then people just wanted me to talk to their cats and what have you. And I found that you could apply the same skills that you develop as a medium to communicating with animals.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask, how did you know you could do this? How did you know that you had got this? Should we call it a gift?
Well, I believe it's something that all people can learn how to do, both mediumship and animal communication. I think it's part of our birthright, actually, and it's a different way of using our mind. So I found out, I suppose, somebody actually, I hadn't even heard of animal communication, and I was already a medium, which was quite remarkable. I don't know how it managed to evade me. Somebody lent me a book, and by a lovely woman called Amelia Kincaid, called Straight from the Horse's Mouth. And I pretty much went out to talk to my little mare with the book in one hand. And I'm joking, I didn't actually have the book in. But I just basically, it's much more heart-centred with animals. So you kind of link with them with your heart. But it feels precisely like mediumship. So I went out and said, "How are you?" to the mare. And the first thing I heard back was, "Will I ever see my family again?" Ooh. And I felt terrible because I'd bought her. And removed her from her family members, her mother, and eventually I got over that and realised that somebody else would have bought her. But it was, it was quite a painful thing when I first started.
So putting this together, you spoke those words to your horse, and you heard in your head the horse's reply.
Yes, and it comes it's different to our internal dialogue. So I talk about the internal dialogue as it's kind of like the chit-chat that goes on in our own mind. What shall I have for tea tonight? Or what does my boss think of me? Or am I doing all right on that report? Or that to me is our internal dialogue. When we receive a thought from an animal, it actually comes in much quicker, and it's not what you're expecting.
What if the animal's dead? How do you do that?
Well, weirdly, and I know this may sound weird, but it feels the same to us as when the animal is alive.
Are you looking at a picture of the animal? Do you know anything about the animal?
Yeah, so no, we always make sure that people don't tell us very much about their animal. So we'll ask the animal's name, their gender. We can do it from photographs. And yes, we talk to a lot of animals that have passed into spirit.
And you're an interesting one, aren't you, Paul? Because you were a cynic. You thought this was a load of codswallop.
I did, yes.
Didn't you? But then you got into it.
Yes. I had my arm twisted, Malcolm.
Good.
So over the months, starting out as a slight cynic, I watched Susie do her workshops, and I became a bit more involved in them. And I saw how it worked, and I became more interested, and so I started to practice it myself. And after soaking it up through osmosis via Susie, I actually started to practice it, and I started to see results. So I thought there must be something to this, and it went on from there. And now I've got the bug for it. And
what do you mean you saw results? How?
Evidence, irrefutable evidence.
What?
So my first clincher was we have a goat called Bo.
I'm not sure this is the sort of story you can say on the radio.
Really?
I won't. Yeah,
oh, I'm intrigued all of a sudden. You had a goat called Bo?
Yeah.
Yes.
And he...
careful as you go, we are on the radio.
We'll be careful, yeah, okay. And he had a problem, he wasn't eating.
Yeah.
And so Susie said, just tune into him one night, He was staying to school at this point because we were in between house moves. And so I tuned into him, and he showed me his bottom in full panoramic view. And he did a very large excretion, and not a normal one. And he showed me this in full Technicolor. And I told Suze, I said, look, this is what I've just seen. It's not a normal goat poo. I think we should check him out. And anyway, so we went there the next morning, and sure enough, around the goat pen was these huge poo clusters, for want of a better word. Clusters of poo, and so they weren't normal goat-sized poos. And so we knew he had a slight problem then.
But that could have happened anyway, couldn't it?
Well, it could.
Yes. But
It doesn't. Animal communication never stands up to a kind of a scientific inquiry, unfortunately. Yes. We're trying to produce personal evidence to the owners that we know something that their animals, that we couldn't possibly have known.
And does that happen?
Oh, lots, yes, lots. So one of the loveliest stories that I have is of talking to an old mare from a photograph. The lady sent me a photograph. I've never met the lady, never met the mare. And I had a telephone appointment with her. And the horse said that the first thing I got was that the lady was tremendously bereaved because she'd lost her daughter, and it was that specific. And so, unfortunately, I was in this position where I had to say, your mare's just showed me that you're crying into her mane and that you're terribly bereaved because you've lost your daughter. And of course, that was accurate, and
that you would never have known.
And I would never have wanted to say it either.
Do you have to get into a certain state before you can do this?
Yes. You have to kind of. It feels like flicking a switch. So it's the same state, I believe, that when we paint our best painting, or when the dance dances us, or any of it. To me, it's a right-brained activity. We have to be quite still and zen-like, if you like. So we're coming out of our analytical left hemisphere. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about biology to possibly say this, but that's how I view it. And we're flicking a switch into a kind of receptive state.
Now, you said earlier on that this is going to sound weird. It all sounds weird.
Yes, I'm
but
sure.
You're used to that, aren't you?
We're used to it. You may not be, Malcolm, but we're used to it.
Yeah. Well, I know there are listeners going to be listening to this now thinking this lady is absolutely bonkers.
Yes, of course, yes.
What do you say to those people?
Well, often I probably don't say tremendous amount because we're not evangelical about it. We don't want to ram it down people's throats that aren't beginning to make those inquiries for themselves. So lots of animal owners, have experiences where they're having these experiences all the time, where they believe their pet or their horse knows what they're thinking at certain times. And also, I suppose the other thing that I might say is that it took a long while for people to believe that the Earth was round, and this is a phenomena that's happening all the time.
Okay, we're going to have a break, and I'm going to allow you to prepare to meet a dog.
Lovely.
Is that okay with you?
Yes,
that's
that's
right with you,
wonderful.
Paul?
Yes,
okay
that's
with that?
fine by me, yeah.
All right then. And this is Nina Dasgupta's dog, and she's going to bring the dog in, and we're going to do an experiment live on the air, if that's all right with you, in a few moments' time.
That's lovely.
Okay, we'll see how we go. This is Susie and Paul's story, and soon it'll be Susie and Paul and the dog. Yeah, it's the Blues Brothers. Everybody needs somebody to love. It's Malcolm Boyden. It's BBC Hereford and Worcester. And we're in conversation with Susie and Paul. They're pet psychics, so they can talk to animals that are alive, animals beyond the grave. I have no idea what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. So stay with us and bear with us if you can. Nina Dasgupta has arrived. Hello, Nina.
Oh, hello, Malcolm.
Now, you've brought your dog into the studio.
I have. I brought one of my dogs. This is. I can't give too much information, can I?
No.
That's
Okay.
right.
I'm allowed. I'm Jasper.
That's all right.
This
She's
is
told you his
Jasper.
name.
Yeah.
Jasper.
Yes.
Now, Jasper has been sitting on Susie's lap throughout the duration of that last record, and Paul and Susie have been gently stroking Jasper. is this room any good for this sort of thing? Point one. We're in an environment you wouldn't usually be in. Is it any good? The vibes
It does make
here?
it a bit harder
Okay.
because the dog's not. He's not in his usual setup, so he's a bit less relaxed than he might be.
Okay.
But we did have a little wander about the car park with him earlier, so we feel like we've got a few things
got
from
a
him.
few
So it's not
snippets,
it's
yeah.
harder, obviously, but we'll manage something.
Okay,
Just to say that often we get stuff that's true of all dogs. So we have to keep going with that until we get something that's a bit of a clincher. We hope for a bit of a clincher.
Okay.
Yeah.
All you've told Susie and Paul is the name of the dog.
Yeah.
Nina. Okay.
Yeah.
So off you go then, Susie. Or Paul. Just chip in when you're
Can
ready.
I just also point out, because Nina's actually present next to us, what happens in the animal world is there's a pecking order. So sometimes animals that have passed will want to chip in, and they'll want to try and get to the front of the queue. So you might have deceased animals trying to push Jasper out the way and have their little say. So
Okay.
just be aware of that.
Nina has
And
to
that
be aware of
applies
that,
to you as
yeah.
well, Malcolm. So any pets
okay.
that you have.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Martin.
Okay. So the first feeling I was getting, I feel he's a very food orientated dog. I know that anyway, because most dogs are. But he's showing me a tall, dark, and it looks like a wooden one, but it's a dark brown at least, cupboard that he is quite focused on. And I think that you go into this cupboard. And I asked Jasper what's in this cupboard. And there's some, all I'm getting is kind of like the rustling of cellophane. So I think you feed him from this cupboard. It looks like a tall one. Does that make sense to you?
Okay, well, hide his food sometimes in the wardrobe because
right.
he can open doors and he can open the
Yeah.
oven.
Okay.
So
right,
try not to give
okay.
too much away. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
can't
so
believe he
that's-
knows where that is.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's very... He's shown me that more than once, so I think it's really quite important to him.
Yeah, he's very food oriented, and he showed me he had a whole chicken in his mouth, a plucked chicken. So this might be his way of saying that he loves chicken, or he has actually had a whole chicken in his mouth. But he showed me that, and he's also shown me that someone is a big fan of fruit, and I'm seeing a pomegranate cut in half, and I'm seeing grapefruit, and these. It might be smoothies. Someone likes smoothies, maybe, because I'm seeing it being poured into a glass.
Does that mean anything? Nina?
She's fine.
Yeah, I do have smoothies, and he has
Yeah.
actually broken into somebody's house, left the front door open. He stole a roast chicken off their table.
Oh, naughty Jasper!
Really? Does that happen?
Down
Bless
the
him.
road to one of our
Bless
neighbours.
him. Yeah. He did show me golf clubs. Somebody's got golf clubs, or there's some golf clubby type things. And somebody being interested in, is it racing, did we think? We both
Yeah, we
got
both
that.
got that
Something about
outside.
cars, either interest in
Yeah.
cars or interest in sort of racing cars. Is
I
what I
thought
mean,
it
not
might
horse
have been
racing.
more stock car racing, that type of thing, but
Not
it's
making
definitely
sense.
some racing.
No, not
No.
a massive
Yeah,
interest.
okay. I
I've
asked
been
her-
to racing, but not massive
All right.
interest.
I asked him who he missed, whether he missed anybody, and he showed me a lady with blonde hair and something unusual about her teeth.
Oh, I don't know. He's a
Right.
rescue.
Right,
Possibly.
okay,
That's what I couldn't
okay.
give an answer
So not
to.
all of this could be
Yeah.
Okay.
corroborated anyway. No.
He also gave me the skull and crossbones and semolina.
Okay.
Does that make any sense to
Skull
you?
and crossbones.
Nothing like being
Again,
specific.
it might have been from before you.
It might have been
Right.
semolina.
No.
It's a school thing, but no.
He feels like he sees you driving around a lot, and he'd like to spend more time with you. Basically, he'd like you to not rush around so much, and he also he did show me that he does get some headaches at times. He has a propensity towards headaches, and he's also showed me that at some point he's had problems with his wee. I'm sorry to say that on air.
Yeah.
But there's some sort of, I
like
don't
a
know whether it's like
cystitis-y
little,
feel.
like a little,
Yeah.
little crystally things, or there's something that's bothered him about.
Oh,
Have you ever
okay.
noticed
No,
that?
I haven't noticed
No,
that.
okay.
I'll get you checked out, Jas.
You know, Susie, when you're saying he's showing me, or Paul, what do
Yeah.
you mean? What are you seeing things in your head? Are you hearing things in your head from the dog? What's happening?
Or both, but mostly, it tends to be mostly images. So snippets will be in your head for a fraction of a second and then it's gone. So you have to relay that. So that's the evidence that the dog's bringing forward.
Yes.
Our job is not to interpret that. So when your mind starts to get involved, your mind's actually your worst enemy. So you just tell the person what evidence you've received and
Yes.
you leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah. He feels as if and there's also thought as well. There's like a thought intention as well, which is sort of hard to explain. But he feels as if he says he would like to come to work with you more often, actually. And
she's
he
always-
doesn't
she's always
actually
at work.
want to be without you. And there's something about the noise of school kids, or I don't know whether you're near a primary school or something like that, but I'm hearing the noise of school kids or a lot of kid noise, and you shutting the door and going, oh, it's so noisy out there, or something like that. Does that make any sense to you?
It does, because he howls when the school kids go past the house.
right.
He howls
Okay.
and howls and howls. So
Right. That's interesting. Is that I wonder what...
usually when I'm trying to have an afternoon nap.
right. Okay. So he's seeing you getting fed up with the noise.
Because she
Yeah.
is dashing around all the time like no one else you would ever know, and I
Yeah.
can say that for her. That's given us a fascinating snippet into the
Yes.
work you do. This is a rescue dog, so of course some of it might have happened before Nina
that's
owned
right.
Jasper.
Yeah.
But-
I've seen lots of ticks. So sorry, Malcolm.
Oh, go on.
Ticks. During tick season, I'm seeing that ticks
get
love
ticks?
crawling up his legs.
Oh, do they?
I've seen quite 2 or 3 underneath here.
Yeah, I have to be really careful of that because he wanders off all over the place.
Right,
so yeah,
okay.
he's had a lot of
Yes,
ticks.
he doesn't feel
Yeah.
like he's let off the lead enough. I don't know whether he's complaining about it now or generally. Anyway, we could go on, Malcolm, and you're trying to...
He's going to be in Hereford if you let him off the lead now.
Yeah.
Listen, Susie and Paul, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's really putting you on the spot, and you have done it for us. And I don't mind what people are thinking at home. They probably have an open mind. Some saying this is rubbish, this is bonkers. Other people, and I'm getting texts now from people who say they actually think there's something in this. So you are actually looking to take this, I don't know whether to call it a show, but let's call it that for now, out on the road. So you are looking for people who might like to host your event in these 2 counties, aren't you, finally?
Absolutely,
Yes.
that would be lovely if we could come up to this part of the world and be able to put on a live show where we invite about 6 animals onto stage in some sort of sequence, and we demonstrate that we're truly doing that. We're
Well-
truly being able to communicate with them. Yeah.
Once again, it sounds like a fascinating night. What I'm going to do is give my number out, because people know my number, and we can pass on the details should people be interested in doing that for you. Is that okay?
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. It's 0345 then 300 8181. Susie and Paul want to come to a village hall, a small theatre, a big theatre, why not, near you to prove to you if they can that this actually works and do it in front of you. So if you know of one, if you'd like to host them, then do give me a call. In the meantime, there you go. Jasper's having a shake. He's done. And Susie and Paul, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for
You're very
agreeing
welcome.
to the experiment as well.
Yes, thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Mel.
inviting us. Thank
Thank
you.
you.